Today was a net positive for the San Francisco 49ers, and I think most 49ers fans seem to agree with me on this one. I'm going to break it down in this episode. I've got all sorts of stuff from the latest signing from the 49ers. Also, we got information about injury updates, a ton of great stuff coming out of camp today. Day one, training camp. Let's go. It's here. It's football season, baby. Let's get after it. Hit subscribe if you haven't already done so. But let me know in the comments how you feel about the San Francisco 49ers signing Equanimeous St. Brown. The applause and the shouting was a little quieter than I expected on the other side of the camera, but I am genuinely interested. What do you think about this signing? How do you feel about it? It's no doubt, like there's no argument here. I'm not trying to spit some kind of like the 49ers just signed the best wide receiver in the league or anything like that. Like there's no clickbait here. There's nothing crazy. It's genuine. Like he's a depth guy. I'm just saying what it is. But I have some things to say about it. I actually have some slight optimisms that I'll throw out there later in the video. Okay. But let me know in the comments what you think about it. First day of camp. There's a lot to react to. So I'm interested in all of your thoughts on all of it. But let's go ahead and move forward, starting with the latest in the trade issue discussion. This is actually, I'm really, really positive. I'm really stoked about how this has gone down because, to be real with you guys, I was a little nervous about this, and I've said that to you the last, week or so. I do have some concerns about this. I believe it's going to get done, but I have some concerns about how long it's going to take to get done. That's my fear. And the 49ers are obviously trying to work out a deal of some kind with Jauan Jennings. I'll play the audio in a second here, but the latest thing that we learned today, the biggest thing that we learned today, maybe perhaps bigger than everything else we learned today, was this. Jennings has reported to camp, has passed his physical, is expected to practice tomorrow, and has not formally asked for a trade per Kyle Shanahan. This is massive news. Now, let me just first address the other thing that I said in that whole little mixture there. He's expected to practice tomorrow. We heard the very same thing about Brandon Aiyuk last year. He's expected to practice. And you know what? Doesn't matter how many times John Lynch says it, he's just towing the company line, saying what the expectation is. He's getting it out there, but at the end of the day, you guys know as well as I do that if he doesn't play, that's the player's decision to figure out whether or not he's going to step on the field and actually do something about it, right? And then the organization can respond how they choose to. But while that part, he's expected to practice or whatever, may not feel as encouraging to you because of what we know about Brandon Aiyuk, and I already started going in my head back to last summer and so many summers before that, but I'm going to try and keep myself out of it because the big news really is that Jauan Jennings has not asked for a trade. Not formally. Deebo Samuel formally asked for a trade. Other guys have formerly asked for a trade, but great news, Jauan Jennings did not. Now, does it mean that Adam Schefter was wrong and that he doesn't want to trade? No. That also is a factor I'm trying to weigh in on all this. Adam Schefter reported that Jauan Jennings wants a deal or he wants to get traded. So the only way that Adam Schefter gets that information and shares it so boldly is it comes from Jauan Jennings or his agent. Most likely his agent, which means his agent's putting it out there that that's what he wants. Now, is that, a formal thing? No, that is good news that it's not formal because we've seen formal requests in the past. However, I'm not quite going to jump all the way over on the other side of the bridge and say that we're past that. He's going to be practicing. He doesn't want to get traded. That was a lie, whatever, because I don't think that I especially don't think that Adam Schefter's blowing smoke. Okay, let's give a listen real quick to something else that might make you feel kind of positive about the trade situation with Jauan Jennings. This little clip had me feeling a little more positive as well.
How the offseason went. Obviously, you guys are very familiar with the business side of this. Did you kind of see this coming down the pipeline with Jauan, given the injuries in the offseason and the moves in the offseason, that he would possibly want to kind of ask for a new contract?
Yeah, I think you anticipate all situations that make sense when a player's in that situation. I see the same thing with Colton McKivitz. Those are two guys to me in very similar situations that I think the way they feel about us is the same way we feel about them. That's the easy part. The hard part's the business side. When people talk about how to avoid drama and stuff and things like that, and I'm trying not to say negative about it, I think that's just business. I don't call that drama, I call that business. I mean, if you want to avoid all drama, then just be really extremely bad at business, and just be ridiculous on everything, and I guess there'd be no drama until you tear your team apart doing that. So, like, you look into all that stuff, but, like, we got a great relationship with these guys. As two guys, that does make sense. We can do everything we can to make that work out, but it's not always easy to make it work out.
So the main thing I wanted you to pick up on that was just this idea that Kyle Shanahan really distilled everything down. Like, it's not drama, it's just business. This is business. We love Jauan Jennings. We love Colton McKivitz. They feel the same way about us. Everything's good except for the contractual business agreement between us. That's the only problem that needs to be sorted out. And I do respect that massively, because that's not the position that every coach has taken. There have been many coaches who have not handled things the way that I was about to say. Never mind. Forget what I was about to say, because I'll be critical and also say that the 49ers have had plenty of transactions they have not handled well. I think Brandon Aiyuk, they did not handle well. Had they handled that earlier in the offseason, the number was there. Supposedly from all the reporting, Mike Silver included, like, there was a number, I think it was $29 million AAV that could have been done and over the line before the summer, and they missed that opportunity, missed that window. They made it go longer than it had to be. A bunch of players got signed, and Brandon Aiyuk wanted more money, and it ended up costing the 49ers more money. Had they got that done earlier, I think in retrospect, I think they would have probably have preferred to get that done earlier. But all that being said, I do think that this is a mature way to handle this. We're all on the same page. We all love each other. Jauan Jennings loves being a 49er. John Lynch talked about it earlier in the interview. I don't know if you're like me and I listened to all of the interviews all the way through. But John Lynch talked about how Jauan Jennings is the type of guy that is the perfect example of what a 49er should be. And he loves him, and everyone wants him to be here. They just have to figure it out. That's a good sign. I won't go deep on this, but Colton McKivitz was another person that was referenced there by Kyle Shanahan. David Lombardi saying in agreement, it's not just Jauan Jennings. Colton McKivitz is in a similar contractual spot. Lame duck year, underpaid relative to the 2024 performance. That demands some of the 49ers' attention. So we'll have to wait and see. But I want to get on to the next thing, which is the 49ers. I kind of said it already earlier in the episode. I asked you kind of what you guys think about this, but let me know what you think about Equanimeous St. Brown being signed by the San Francisco 49ers officially today. He was obviously one of the guys that was checked out yesterday, that had a tryout with the 49ers. Not a whole lot of exciting stuff last year to talk about. Over the course of his career, he's had 63 receptions for 928 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's across 60 career games. He's a depth guy. There's no argument about it. But he's also 6'5" and runs a 4.440, or ran a 4.440 pre-draft. So that's also something worth expressing. Like, there's something there in terms of athleticism. You obviously know Amon-Ra St. Brown, his brother, what he's capable of. So there's no doubt, of course, in terms of what the bloodline could potentially create. There's no doubt, of course, in terms of what the athleticism can produce on a field. The only question that's left is who can get the most out of him? That's the question I want answered. And if I had to put my money on any team in the NFL to get the most out of a wide receiver, I'd have to put my money on Kyle Shanahan. I'd have to put my money on this front office, on this football team, this coaching staff, and what they've been able to do with wide receivers in the past, and the leadership in this wide receiver room. Maybe Brandon Aiyuk excluded. I'm not sure yet. I'm still a little unsure post-contract what I think about the leadership Brandon Aiyuk brings in the locker room. But that aside, there's definitely something special about working with Kyle Shanahan, the way that he treats his wide receivers, the difficulty he puts his wide receivers through, the effort, the work. He's a depth guy. He's a fill out the 90-man roster kind of guy. I'm not trying to paint him to be anything he's not. I'm not trying to get you all extra hyped about this guy and put some fake hype on a player that might not turn out to be a 49er when the 53-man roster comes out. However, the 49ers needed a guy. Kyle Shanahan talked about it today in the press conference. The 49ers needed a guy to fill out that 12th position for wide receivers. Just needs 12. He talked about it extensively. The need for 12 is a real thing for him and how he likes to run training camp. So that always means there's an opportunity. And, that's not a bad thing. So I love it. I'm not going to complain about it. Mike Tannenbaum on ESPN had something to say about the 49ers. It included a little bit about St. Brown, but it included also some other thoughts. So I'm going to let you give this clip a listen as well.
Adam, I'm bullish on the 49ers for several reasons. First of all, outside of Saquon Barkley, when Christian McCaffrey's healthy, arguably he's the best running back in the sport. Sometimes we forget about that. George Kittle's still well within his prime. I think Pearsall will continue to be a very productive receiver. And when you look at the other players they have, when they moved on from Deebo Samuel, they will get Brandon Aiyuk back at some point. And if I was talking to Jauan Jennings, I would not be asking for a new deal. I would be looking at this.
Whoa, listen to this. Listen to this. Sorry to pause the clip there. If I was talking to Jauan Jennings, or if I was Jauan Jennings, I would not be looking for a deal. Listen to what he says here. This is very similar to something Kyle Posey recently said. Shout out to Kyle Posey for saying this exact same thing.
This as an investment in your future. Go have a great season, and then all the economics will take care of themselves. They also have Jacob Cowing. You mentioned Equanimeous St. Brown. They have plenty of weapons with a very good quarterback who's well coached and a great offensive line led by left tackle Trent Williams. So to me,
interesting that he brings up Equanimeous St. Brown in his discussion about this team and talented roster. That wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if it's just because the signing just happened and so it's, in the short-term memory bank there, whatever. I think there are other guys that I'm more excited about right now. Jordan Watkins, for example, recently brought in. Isaiah Nair recently brought in. He already mentioned Jacob Cowing and Ricky Pearsall. Of course, two guys I'd love to see a lot out of these guys. This is their year. This is the opportunity. It's never going to get as good as the opportunity is here. By the way, we'll get back to Ricky Pearsall in a minute as we get to the injury update, so don't go anywhere if you are not in the know on all of the injury update. I've got the whole thing for you. But, in general, it's hard to argue with Tannenbaum here. There's still a lot of talent on this roster. And I'm stoked about it. Obviously, good to hear that. And interesting that St. Brown gets thrown in the mix there as well. Huge injury updates. Huge injury updates for the 49ers, starting with, of course, Ricky Pearsall. The team does not anticipate a long absence for Pearsall. That's the big news. That's the good news. But it gets a little bit interesting, and I'll tell you my take. I'm interested in your take if you actually listen to the clip. But here's the quote. When they took their physicals, they weren't deemed to be ready on that specific day. So that actually plays into a lot to what Matt Miyoko was saying. That based on just how things lined up, when players were in the building, they might have been on PUP if they weren't in the right shape at the time. In some instances, they'll come off relatively quickly. It's kind of a ramp-up situation where they've been away. We want to assess them. We want to get them off to the side and kind of build them up an abundance of caution. And that also preserves the right, in some cases with PUP NFI, to use that at the roster cut. But in some of these instances, we anticipate it being short-term. Ricky would be one of those short-term things. So just saying, this is not a roster thing. This is not a sneaky move. This is just how this is playing out. It's a short-term thing. Lynch confirmed Pearsall won't practice on Wednesday, but will work off to the side. Ricky had a bad hamstring in OTAs. Shanahan added. Then he corrected himself, which I think is interesting. We'll talk about that in a second. I mean, not a real bad, a normal one. He's good now. He's hit all his miles per hour. He's fine. We just haven't seen him the last 2 weeks. So there are some definite people out there who are making a lot out of that statement. He had a bad hamstring in OTAs. A lot of people saying they didn't like hearing that. A lot of people like, well, hold on now. That doesn't seem like what you said earlier. So the question is, the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. I think he corrects himself and says, not a real bad, just a normal one, because he realizes how people might take that statement. And I think the truth is it was probably worse than he projected in June. but it probably isn't as bad as people are going to want to make it after that statement, which I think is something that's interesting in itself. You can let me know in the comments what you think, but we're not going to throw a wideout out there the first 3 days. We don't want to pull it again until we see his conditioning and everything, which we should get in 3 days, and then he should be good. So basically, if you listen to the actual audio, you can agree with me in the comments on this one, but basically the way that it was put out by John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan was simply put, they have not had a chance to actually get a good enough of a look at him to feel confident putting him in 100% into training camp. And so they're kind of based on how everything shaked out and the way that it worked. He's pup right now for a short period of time. We can get better look at him, make sure everything is 100% good to go, and then they'll go forward with it, which I think is a good thing. No complaint there. Was also asked to follow up if the hamstring injury involved was a partial tear, and he said no. With respect to Brandon Aiyuk, I'm on the fence if this was better or worse news than what we already had. So just listen to this. With respect to BA, he did a lot to his knee, and I would tell you that he's in a really good place considering all that. Now, what does that mean in terms of a timeline and all that? We're continuing to assess and get information. He did a lot of rehab away from here, so I think when you get those guys back, there's all kinds of objective measurements that you want to do. So be working on his rehab with our guys. I think we're encouraged on where he's at, but not anywhere close to having a set in stone timeline. So the negative is not anywhere close to a set in stone timeline. However, I actually think just listening to the entire press conference as a whole and thinking about how last year's press conferences went, I actually think this has more to do with John Lynch being way more careful about what he's saying when it comes to timelines, being really, really careful. Like it was like they had a meeting with PR right before they walked up on stage and they both agreed, hey, number one thing we don't do today is we don't give timetables. We don't give timelines. That's how it felt to me. It felt like they were just working really hard to avoid specifics. And I'm okay with that. Kyle Shanahan did say they will not be ready in training camp. And so, the chance that he's ready for week 1, having missed out on training camp and gets to play is wildly unlikely. And so he probably ends up on PUP, which is exactly what Matt Miyoko has said from the very beginning. So it's probably not anything new if we're honest. Barch sustained a quad injury, but the 49ers expect him to be healthy enough to practice soon. He hurt himself working out away from here. He's one of those guys, not going to put a timeline, but relatively soon should be coming back, said John Lynch. So that's a good sign as well. We had no idea Barch was injured, and he's a very critical position, a very critical person for this upcoming season in offensive line because they're basically expecting him to be the left guard, kind of. So he has to figure it out. Obviously, there's other guys. There's Zakel out there. There's other guys out there. I'm not trying to say there's not. Burford's out there, but I think the expectation is that Barch is going to be the left guard. And so, yeah, I would like to say that it was kind of a big deal seeing him on NFI, and I'm happy to hear that everything's going okay and he's going to be just fine. So that's a good sign as well. And of course, massive, massive happy news for Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams, who both missed significant time due to injuries last season. Healthy heading into training camp. Still, the 49ers plan to be cautious with their workload. Last year, neither of them did camp, and that didn't help them go through the season either, Shanahan said. So I'm glad that they're both here and healthy, and they get a chance to build their bodies where they have a chance to get through the season like they have in the past. Something worth noting on Trent Williams showing up to camp. This is kind of an unprecedented year for him. Shows up to OTAs and showing up to camp for the whole thing. Pretty wild there. Shanahan also provided brief updates on Yetur Gross-Matos and Andre Dillard, who were also placed on the PUP list. I think it's similar to Ricky Pearsall that because they've been away, we could put them out there right now with how they check, but we're going to be safe, evaluate them for these 3 days. So I think they're actually 4 days and then a day off. So I think 3 days of practice and 1 day off, if I remember correctly. So I think Sunday is off, if I'm not mistaken. Regarding safety, Malik Mustafa, who suffered an ACL injury in the last season's finale, Shanahan stated his recovery and how he is as good as it could be. Just the way he works, the way everything checks, it's amazing, but it's still an ACL. So you've got to give it the time. Lynch added that Mustafa's injury was a revision of a previous ACL tear, making it a unique situation through the season. They'll have, that's the other one. Sorry. So that's the lower quote. The thing about Malik Mustafa, he talked about it. It's very similar to Ricky Pearsall in certain ways. How he talked about just that, Malik Mustafa is looking way ahead of schedule. That's kind of how he insinuated that. But that they have, like I think Lynch said, like doctors have certain timetables that they want the athlete to follow. So even though physically they're outperforming the timetable, they have certain metrics that they wait for that timetable in order to go. So they're holding Malik Mustafa back, I think, if that makes sense. Oh, it's actually, the quote is right here. He wants to be out there today, believes that he could be, but we have to kind of hold him back. So there you go. With the time element, Malik is going to outperform every time because he's a special athlete, and then he's a special human being who's going to do everything and more. But there is, I think, especially with the revision, just a time element that doctors want to see you get. My friends, faithful, we've made it. 0 days left, training camp. We're finally there. Practice tomorrow. You're going to see footage of the San Francisco 49ers on your timeline, in your social media feeds tomorrow. It's a special day. Can't wait to talk about it in the very near future, as in tomorrow after work. I'll record a video talking about it, updating you guys at that time with the biggest storylines, plus some other storylines I'm assuming we're going to have to get to tomorrow that we missed today. There were so many other things. We will get there. Appreciate you guys. Hope you guys are having a fantastic Tuesday evening. Football is back.